Welcome into the lovely Moss Arts Center here in Blacksburg, Virginia for another edition of the 3304 Sports Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Robert Bateman, joined alongside Taylor Brettel and Wesley Clark. And fellas, let's jump right into the action with some women's hoops. Last night, Virginia Tech, the number 17 ranked Hokies, hosted UVA inside Cassell Coliseum in the Commonwealth Clash, and the Hokies came out on top, 76-63. Wesley, what were some of your thoughts on the matchup?
Well, what a game, right? A rivalry that dates back to 1895. And for Virginia Tech, a takeaway, 47 rebounds compared to UVA's 31. And that's a huge difference. I mean, that gives you so many different opportunities to score, and that's exactly what they did, especially with Liz Kitley's 33 points, 18 rebounds, and her 14th double-double of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, let's take a second to hone in on the ACC and women's basketball because it's absolutely loaded this year. 6 teams are ranked in the top 25 right now, and there's a 7th on the bubble in FSU, my apologies. So, guys, I got to ask, especially you, Taylor, who you got as your favorite to win the ACC championship and maybe a dark horse too?
Yeah, ACC, like you said, is loaded, and it feels like those standings just keep going up and down and up and down. I mean, you have NC State at number 5, clearly leading the ACC, and then you have to go to 14 to Notre Dame, followed by Louisville, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and North Carolina. For my dark horse pick, I got Duke, beating Virginia Tech by 17 and Florida State by 42 recently. I think they could sneak in there because, you know, it's conference play, it's tournament play, anything can really happen. But if I had to pick a championship matchup, I feel like Virginia Tech is one of the most rounded teams. You have, you know, graduates and seniors and Kayla King, Georgia Amor, Liz Kitley, and I don't think you can pick against NC State. So that'll be my championship, but if there were a dark horse, I got to go with the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, well, one of those teams that we'll definitely have to hone in on are the reigning champs in the Virginia Tech Hokies. For more on Kenny Brooks and his Queens of the Castle, here's Tucker Terry.
Just over a week ago, the Hokies were suffering through a 3-game stretch that included an unconvincing win over Clemson and their first 2-game slide in almost 2 years. Georgia Amor and Kayla King were banged up, and the Hokies had fallen to 19th on the AP poll, their lowest ranking of the year. However, they didn't let their struggles linger, completely flipping the script with massive wins over number 21 Syracuse and the Virginia Cavaliers in the Commonwealth Clash this week. After regaining momentum on January 25th in a huge win over Georgia Tech, the Hokies, who entered the game at just 2-3 on the road, traveled to Syracuse, a team that was previously undefeated at home. Despite Syracuse's home court advantage and Elizabeth Kitley's worst game of the season, Virginia Tech earned a 75-62 victory behind 56 combined points from the sharpshooting trio of Georgia Amor, Kayla King, and Matilda Eck. The Hokies are truly a dangerous team when they can count on their players outside of Kitley and Amor. So a win, despite a bad performance from Kitley, is very encouraging. With that being said, when you have 2 All-American caliber players, you expect a lot out of them, which is exactly what they provided against the Wahoos on Thursday night in Cassell Coliseum. Georgia Amor dropped a 20-point, 14-assist double-double, while Elizabeth Kitley responded from her off night with a monster 33-point, 18-rebound masterpiece. Now, having picked up 4 straight wins, it seems as if the Hokies have rebounded from their mini slump just in the nick of time. They are about to enter the gauntlet as 5 of their final 8 games are against ranked opponents, including their 2 games this coming week. The first against 24th-ranked UNC Tar Heels and the second at the 5th-ranked NC State Wolfpack. There's no doubt NC State has a bitter taste in their mouth from the dramatic Elizabeth Kitley buzzer beater that gave them their first loss of the season just about a month ago. On the other hand, the Hokies have a chance to make a statement this week, as 2 more wins against teams of that caliber would prove that the Hokies are as dangerous as anyone in the country come March.
Great work, Tucker. Well, let's take our talk down to Coral Gables, where the Virginia Tech men take on Miami this Saturday. But before we can get into VT's upcoming matchup, here's Phoebe Winters to break down the Hokies' last outing against the Duke Blue Devils. Phoebe, what do you got?
After losing 5 of their previous 6 visits to Cassell Coliseum, the Duke Blue Devils notched a win. Duke won 77-67 earlier this week, snapping the Hokies' 3-game winning streak. Let's take a closer look at this game and get into what went wrong for Virginia Tech, And what went right for Duke? Duke dominated in the rebounding category, an area that the Hokies have been struggling with lately. The Blue Devils managed to limit the Hokies to 20 rebounds while grabbing 38 boards for themselves. They also out-rebounded Tech 10-4 on the offensive glass. After the game, head coach Mike Young commented that the team was being out-rebounded because they unfortunately kept getting caught in rotations. Tech also struggled against Duke's defense as they were held to 67 points, which is a whole 7.7 below their season average. Overall, what went right for this Duke team was their shooting. Duke shot 55.4% from the field, their third best effort this season, and drained 52.9% of their threes. Sophomore guard MJ Collins on Virginia Tech, who ended the game with a total of 17 points, left the game late in the second half, worrying many of the Hokie faithful. However, Mike Young assured everyone after the game that Collins was just suffering from a cramp and is in good health. Moving on, Tech will hit the road as they take a trip down to the Sunshine State. Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard, Tech will take on the Miami Hurricanes at Watsco Center. Miami is currently 14-7 and 5-5 in the conference. Comparatively, Tech is at 13-8 and 5-5 in the conference. Tech is currently averaging 67 points on the road. Miami averages 85.3 at home, but recently has been scoring well below that average with 77.5 points per game. This will be Tech's second meeting with Miami this season. Their first meeting ended with a 75-71 loss for Tech. Going into this weekend, the Hokies will need to focus their attention on their defense as they face the best offensive squad the ACC has to offer. Miami is rich with scorers and high-level athletes, including Norshard Omier, Ugo Poplar, and FSU transfer Matthew Cleveland. Now, having Hunter Couture in the lineup this go-around, who was absent during the team's first meeting this season, will certainly benefit the team and their defensive presence. But it won't be an easy matchup. Back to you guys.
Awesome stuff, Phoebe. Well, guys, the Hokies travel down to Coral Gables to take on the Hurricanes tomorrow. And I got to ask, what really stands out to you guys about that Miami squad?
Yeah, Miami keeps their games close. I was looking at all their ACC play. Anytime they've lost in the ACC, it's been by single digits. They keep all their games close, and when they beat Virginia Tech, it was a close win as well, 75-71. And Nigel Pack at the guard, I can see him really lifting the Hurricanes through their season. And controlling the ball has been something big for Miami, limiting the turnovers. In those close games, when they come out with it, you can look at the turnover differential. So if they can really keep the ball well in this one against the Hokies, I think they could come out on top.
Yeah, Pack is a transfer from NC State, and you also have Norshad Omier, who transferred from Arkansas State. So those are two redshirt juniors that are just cruising Miami to the win column.
Yeah, I mean, the transfer portal's kind of crazy now.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to be bouncing around
At least
everywhere. But
once.
let's focus in on Mike Young's squad. I mean, the Hokies, they're kind of streaky in ACC play. What are the positives and negatives you guys have seen out of them?
Well, negative, their offensive scoring is ranked 179, and that has to change when you go to March. I mean, you just can't go into both tournaments ranked 179. Now, for the positives is the X factor. It's usually Sean Padula. Last time it was MJ Collins versus Duke, but it seems like Virginia Tech always has one player to keep them in the game.
Yeah, that one-player X factor is like a positive and a negative because you kind of want all of them to show up at once. It's nice to have that X factor to lift you to that win, but it would kind of be nice if they can all have that good game at once instead of having to rely on the back of one of those three.
Yeah, well, the Hokies currently sit on the bubble, so we'll see if they can get themselves into that NCAA tournament. But let's highlight one of the main Hokie stars who has been there for years after year. For an in-depth breakdown of a Hokie mainstay, it's our very own Aiden Butler.
When head coach Mike Young made the transition from Wofford to Virginia Tech, it was decision time for a three-star guard from Orlando, Florida. Ultimately, Hunter Couture chose to follow his coach and become a Hokie. Couture has been a staple for the Virginia Tech men's basketball program ever since. A prolific shooter in an offensive scheme that values the three ball, a tenacious defender, and a fan favorite. One of his most memorable moments, a career performance that propelled the Hokies to an ACC championship victory in 2022. Following last season, however, it was decision time for Couture yet again. It seemed at one point the senior would call it a day on his college career. But after some consideration, he chose to utilize his COVID year of eligibility and take to the collegiate hardwood one more time for his fifth and final season. Just as in the past, Couture has been a focal point on the Tech squad this season, averaging double-digit points per game and leading the team in three-pointers and steals. But what has been the most eye-popping is how number 0 continues to etch his name atop the Tech record books. Back in November against Boise State, Couture buried his 268th career three-pointer, good for the most in program history. Last week in a victory against Boston College, history was made yet again when Couture appeared in his 137th game for the Hokies, a new record for the most games ever played in the program. Finally, history was rewritten one more time on Monday when Couture connected on the 300th three-pointer of his college career. Only the 13th ever player in the ACC to accomplish the feat, and the first ever Hokie. With still plenty of ball left to be played this season, Couture can continue to distance himself and make those aforementioned records nigh untouchable. One thing is for sure, the Hokies team will need Couture to be in top form and will heavily lean on him once again as they look to make a run at the big dance. From 3304 Sports, I'm Aiden Butler.
Phenomenal as always, Aiden. All right, guys, before we get out of here, with the conference tournaments in just about a month away, I'm really curious. ACC is kind of packed on both men's and women's. So I want to know, who do you guys have in the final for both conference tournaments, and who do you think's taking home the silverware?
Yeah, starting off with women's, my final, like I said earlier in the show, it's ACC play and anything can happen. You know, you want to take the top dog in NC State, but you just never know. I watched NC State and UNC yesterday, and UNC played them pretty close, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing from that squad. So I got Virginia Tech and UNC in my championship for women's, and I got the Hokies taking this one.
Really?
I feel like it's the farewell tour for, Kitley and Amor. It would be very good to go out on top
Yeah,
of that.
well, the Hokies definitely know how to do it in crunch time. How about the men?
For men's, I got Duke and UVA. Now, UNC, they're a little bit interesting. They look very good, got all the way up to 3 in the country, and then had a little dud against Georgia Tech, and it makes you start to question. I mean, they could not hit shots. Granted, they barely lost that game by 1 point, but it makes you a little bit worrisome. And UVA is always known to have the typical UVA defense, low-scoring games, so that's where I got them going there. But I got Duke taking the throne in a Duke-UVA matchup.
How about Georgia Tech? Let's talk about that for a second. They seem like the giant slayer in the ACC men's conference, knocking off Duke and UNC, and they've only got 3 conference wins. All right, Wesley, how about you?
I'm also going to have Virginia Tech back in the title, and I'm going to go a little sneaky here, the Fighting Irish.
On the women's side?
Yes, the women's side. The reason is because they're 8-1 on the road, and I think that one loss and just the ability to win on the road will work wonders in a neutral site. So Virginia Tech, Fighting Irish. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech winning back-to-back titles. Now for the men's. Close to you, but I'm going to go UNC and UVA. UNC, Baycott, RJ Davis, they seem like they've been there since the dawn of time. So I think that experience against UVA, who I think will get hot during the tournament, it just won't be enough. UNC is going to take the men's tournament.
Yeah, I mean, UVA currently on a 5-game win streak, so I can definitely see them getting hot late. Well, I'm kind of coming on a left field with these ones here. I don't have a single name that you guys mentioned.
That's
so
good.
We'll start on the men's side. I'm going to go with John Shire and Duke making it all the way to the finals against, now this one is going to come out of nowhere. I think Adrian Autry is going to get the orange rolling come conference tournament time. So I think we're going to see a Duke-Syracuse final, but I don't think Syracuse will be able to knock off the Blue Devils, especially in a title game. So I think Duke's going to win it on the men's side. And then on the women's side, I'm going to switch things up again. I think UNC is one of those teams that when it comes tournament time, they look phenomenal. So I think they're going to get all the way to the final against NC State. I mean, before Virginia Tech kind of came into the ACC last year and took over as that top dog, NC State was winning the tournament year after year after year. And I think seeing another team like Virginia Tech win it last year is just going to fuel them up and get them ready to go. So I think NC State's going to take home the ACC championship on the women's side this year. Well, all right, guys. I think that's going to be it. I'd like to say a big thank you to our reporters, Aiden Butler, Tucker Terry, and Phoebe Winters, for obviously everyone in the back, Gavin James, Riley Klaus, Cody Wagner, all producing behind the scenes. Thank you so much. For my guys at the desk, Wesley Clark and Taylor Brettel, I'm Robert Bateman saying so long for now, and we'll see you next week.